Amboseli National Park, late morning. A bull elephant limps from the acacia line, his massive frame shifting awkwardly with each step. His rear left leg drags slightly behind, toes splaying unnaturally as dust gathers at his feet. The wound is not old. Fresh blood darkens the crease behind his knee, already stiffened with drying earth. His ears flap once, briefly, then go still. Each movement carries effort, and still he presses forward, silent, deliberate, heavy with pain. From a distance, Ranger Luma watches through binoculars, standing knee-deep in pale grass. She lowers the lenses slowly, then reaches for her radio. Her voice is quiet, almost cautious. A soft call for veterinary support echoes through static before she places the device back at her side. She hasn't moved toward him yet. The bull doesn't know her, and this isn't the kind of injury that can be rushed. The elephant pauses near a termite mound, resting his trunk gently on its sun-baked side. His breath escapes in slow bursts, ribs faintly visible beneath his broad flank. Flies gather around the torn skin on his leg, tracing its edge where the flesh is puckered and swollen. It could be a snare. Luma knows the look, tight enough to tear deep, slow enough to cripple. If infection sets in, he won't last long on the move. If he lies down before they reach him, he may never stand again. She steps a little closer, keeping low. The dry wind carries her scent ahead, and the bull shifts slightly, raising his head. Not high, just enough to sense. He doesn't trumpet or bolt. His eyes settle toward her but don't fix. Instead, he turns slightly away and continues limping, choosing the harder path uphill toward scattered fig trees. She follows at a distance, boots crunching against gravel and root. His tusks are long but not symmetrical. The left is chipped near the tip, worn with time. His back is broad, but his weight sags to one side now, altered by the pain. Small birds flit around him, oxpeckers pecking gently at the cracked skin along his spine. He lets them. It's the only touch he allows. No herd nearby, no calves to protect, no warning calls exchanged. He is alone, and Luma knows that's not a choice bulls make lightly in this region. Injury isolates. Vulnerability pushes them away from their own kind. She stops again as he reaches a dried-up stream bed and lowers himself carefully, groaning low and soft. It's not a sound of threat. It's weariness. The earth shifts under his weight, and he stays down, breathing through flared nostrils as his trunk lies curled in the dust. Luma crouches nearby, her notepad resting against her thigh. She scribbles quick notes, wound position, estimated age, breathing rhythm. But mostly she watches. Injured elephants are unpredictable. Fear pushes them fast when they shouldn't run. Pride makes them hide pain that can kill. She's seen fighting until they collapse. Others walk into marshland and never come back. This one, he's waiting. Still alert, but tired enough not to move again. That buys them time. But not much. The air is dry and stinging with heat. Small gusts lift loose grass and sand, brushing gently across the elephant's flank. His skin twitches beneath it, and his tail sways once, then falls limp. From where she stands, Luma can now see the full extent of the damage. The gash wraps around the upper leg like a deep groove, tissue puckered and raw. If it is a snare wound, the metal's likely long gone, but the injury still strangles movement. A slow constriction that does not heal without help. She lifts the radio again, voice lower this time. Still mobile, he's down for now. No hurt in sight, wound severely. Please advise. A pause, then static answers, followed by the familiar crackle of the vet team confirming they're en route. 2 hours, maybe less. The bull shifts again, curling his trunk loosely toward his mouth but doesn't feed. His eyes remain half-closed, lids flickering. Not sleeping, just preservation. She's seen it in lions before a storm, or giraffes when heat takes their calves. a quiet stillness where the body conserves what little strength it has left. Luma sits now, slowly, keeping her outline low against the grass. She doesn't speak yet. That comes later, if he allows it. Her hand rests near her knee, still, open, facing upward. It's a long wait sometimes, but rushing a bull in pain does more harm than good. They don't understand the intention, only presence, only pressure, and she's careful not to add either. The radio crackles again. ETA 45. Relief, measured but real. She glances back toward the jeep, parked out of view beyond the ridge. Her partner waits there, eyes on the road. They've done this before, but no two cases are alike. Some elephants rise before help arrives. Some don't let help near. Some run, tearing wounds open until they bleed out beneath thorn trees. Luma breathes slowly and watches the dust rise in lazy coils around the bull's flank. If he runs, now, he dies. If they approach too soon, he may not let them come again. She stays still, steady, grounded in silence. The only sound between them is the soft rustle of wind through dry leaves and the slow, labored breath of an elephant that hasn't given up yet. The air pressed warm and heavy over the savanna as the sun climbed higher, casting long, warped shadows under the scattered thorn trees. From her place behind a scrub thicket, Luma watched the bull rise again, slowly, his weight settling awkwardly onto 3 legs. The fourth, the injured rear, barely touched the ground now. He hesitated, then stepped forward, his massive shoulders shuddering with the strain. A sharp breath escaped him, short and forced. His trunk swung low but didn't curl, grazing the earth like a forgotten thread. The pain was changing him, no longer sharp, but dull, buried, spreading. Behind her, the vet truck idled low in the distance. Dr. Kalin, the lead veterinarian, stood with a tranquilizer rifle cradled loosely in his arms, watching through binoculars. He didn't speak. No one did. The space between the humans and the bull was filled with quiet calculation and the quiet pulse of risk. The elephant had moved east toward open flats. That gave them visibility, but every step meant stress, tearing through the wound, drawing deeper the hidden edges of infection. The longer he moved, the less time they had. The injury now showed more clearly, a raw ring of torn tissue circling the leg just above the knee joint, swollen, cracked, and weeping along the edges. The skin had grown ridged and angry around the circumference, a clear sign of a snare wound. Probably wire, possibly coated. The kind poachers set for bush meat, careless of what they catch. If it tightened just a little more, it could sever the tendon. If the wound reached the bone, amputation would not be a question. It would be the only option. But not out here. Not for a wild bull without a herd to wait for him. The elephant paused again beside a dead stump, leaning slightly, ribs rising with each breath. A small cloud of oxpeckers landed on his back, pecking lazily at sun-dried skin. He flinched at their touch but didn't shake them off. His ears drooped, dry around the edges, veins no longer prominent. His trunk lifted briefly toward his own leg, as if to swat at something unseen, but fell again before it reached. Luma shifted her weight and signaled to the team. He was beginning to lose sensation. Kalin stepped forward now, slowly, eyes on the bull. At this range, they couldn't afford a misfire. The dosage had been carefully calculated, based on weight estimates and the level of distress. But elephants process tranquilizers differently under stress. Some go down fast, others resist. One wrong move, too soon, too late, too loud, and the bull could bolt. If he ran with that wound, he'd shred muscle from bone, and if he dropped in flight, the fall alone could crush his own ribs. Luma knelt again and spoke low, not to him, but into the wind. "Not long now," she whispered. It wasn't meant for comfort, just rhythm, just presence, the kind of voice animals feel more than hear. She had done this before, with oryx calves, with buffalo, even with a young giraffe once, legs tangled in fence wire. Her voice didn't command. It offered nothing but steadiness. The bull shifted, his trunk lifted again, nostrils flaring. He smelled them now. Not fear, just awareness. A line of dark flies circled his wound, drawn to the slickness where pus had begun to form along the lower fold. He twitched once, briefly lifting the leg, then set it down again and stood very still. A quiet moment passed, broken only by the soft creak of leather as Kalen adjusted his stance. Then the rifle cracked. The dart struck just behind the shoulder, embedding it with a sharp jolt. The bull flinched hard, pivoting toward the source with a raised trunk. He didn't run. Not yet. He turned, swinging his tusks sideways, tail flicking, a soft rumble building in his chest. The reaction was expected. He circled twice, testing footing, looking for something to push against, but the leg failed him. He stumbled, righted himself, then froze. The sedative worked slowly, through blood and breath. Luma counted each sway, each stagger. 4 minutes passed. His knees began to buckle. His head dipped low, trunk dragging furrows in the dirt. She stepped forward carefully, hand raised, but didn't move closer yet. He had to fall safely, not collapse. One wrong angle could shatter his shoulder. If he landed wrong, the rescue would turn into recovery, or worse. He sank finally, front legs folding first, then the rest of him, like a slow descent into earth. The final breath before he stilled was deep, full of dust. His side heaved once more, then fell quiet. The team moved in now. Quiet boots over dry grass, hands steady, eyes scanning. Luma kept her focus on his face, watching for signs of waking, watching the lashes flicker. He didn't move. For now, the drug is held, but time pressed thin. Beneath the surface, the real danger stirred. Infection, swelling, a wound that might not forgive delay. If they didn't act fast, he wouldn't rise again. If they missed something beneath the skin, the damage would only deepen. Luma exhaled and followed Kalen's lead, knowing this was their only chance to turn pain into healing before it slipped too far beyond reach. The bull shifted his weight with difficulty, his trunk brushing the earth as he turned slowly toward the east. A low rumble passed through his chest, not loud enough to warn, but full of unrest. The wind had changed. He knew they were near. His leg, stiffened and raw, wobbled beneath him as he limped toward the edge of the clearing. Beyond the dried creek bed, thicker bush rose in tangled waves. If he reached it, visibility would vanish. If they lost sight, they lost their chance. He would be too deep to follow safely, too hidden to risk a dart without knowing where he might fall. Kalen glanced toward Luma, already holding the sedative prepared in its pressurized cylinder. They had no margin left. Infection was spreading. The swelling had grown darker just above the knee. Each step the elephant took dug deeper into the wound. If he reached dense cover, he might panic and fall unseen, twisting a joint or fracturing bone. If they waited too long, the moment would pass, and with it, the small opening for help. Luma stepped forward slowly, leaving the shade of the thorn tree behind. She didn't raise her arms or make herself small. She simply walked, each step measured and deliberate, boots pressing lightly into the baked ground. The elephant paused, sensing the change in distance. His head lifted slightly, trunk curling, nostrils flaring toward the air. He did not run. Not yet. His body remained angled away, but his ears shifted toward the sound of her presence. The line between fear and fatigue grew thin. Her voice came softly now, not a command, not a plea, but a rhythm, low, even, and unbroken. It was not the words, but the tone that mattered. She kept it steady, repeating the same syllables in a whisper that rose no higher than the grass. The elephant blinked once, slowly, then turned his head to look toward her. Not fully, but enough. His trunk brushed his injured leg again, twitching against the pain. The brush swayed faintly behind him. One more step, and he would be lost to sight. The vet raised his arm in quiet readiness. Luma did not stop speaking. Her voice stayed constant, not louder, not faster, just there. A sound that asked nothing and gave nothing but presence. Then, for the briefest moment, he stilled. His ears relaxed downward, his trunk drooping slightly, dust clinging to its folds. He didn't step forward. He didn't bolt. He stood suspended between tension and calm. Kalen fired. The dart struck cleanly behind the shoulder. The elephant flinched, twisting slightly, his muscles tensing in a wave along his flank. A puff of breath burst from his mouth and his eyes widened. But he didn't run. He backed up once, then turned halfway toward the thicket before stopping. His breathing grew heavier. His legs trembled faintly and he swayed in place. Luma stood still, her hands open at her sides, her voice falling to near silence. "Easy now," she murmured. The drug would take minutes. Some bulls dropped quickly, others fought the haze. Luma watched the tremor in his front knees, the slackening of his trunk as it trailed across the soil. His tail stopped moving. His weight shifted again, unsteady, unsure. One foot dragged slightly, then caught against a root. He paused, head dipping. If he fell now, too hard or at the wrong angle, it could break ribs. If he kept walking, he could go too far for the team to reach safely. Either risk could end his chance of recovery. They needed him to stay. They needed the sedative to work gently. His shoulder dipped, his eyelids fluttered. Then, slowly, his legs began to fold. Front first, then rear, easing into the ground like a tower lowered by time. Luma moved only when his full weight settled. His chest still rose, slower now, breath rasping faintly. The dart had done its work. He had stayed just long enough. No panic, no collapse. The danger hadn't passed, but the first step had held. In the soft light of late afternoon, dust curled along the base of the acacia trees. Grass leaned under the wind. The elephant lay still but alive. His body, though battered and marked by the cruelty of wire, remained intact. Luma exhaled and turned to signal the team. The hardest part would begin now, but for a moment the space between fear and trust had held long enough to matter. The bull's body rested in the dry soil, still rising and falling with each slow breath. Dust clung to the folds of his thick skin, and his trunk lay curved beside his mouth, unmoving. The sedative had settled deep now, but not too deep. His eye remained half-lidded, flickering once as the wind shifted. Behind him, the open plain held its silence, but the urgency now belonged to the team that moved quickly and without sound. No one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of insect wings and the occasional soft rustle of movement as gloves met skin, cloth met metal. Dr. Kalen knelt first at the rear flank, his hand brushing gently across the swollen tissue. Flies scattered in a restless cloud and the wound came into full view. What they had suspected was confirmed within seconds. The snare had cut deep, far beyond the surface. A dark groove circled the upper rear leg, lined with jagged flesh and exposed sinew. The wire had likely wrapped for days, tightening with every step, every stumble. A groove where hair no longer grew ran in a full ring, puckered and gray at the edges. In some parts, the lacerations reached the muscle bed, and beneath that they could see signs of early necrosis. The damage was not just external. This wound was already beginning to fail from within. They worked with speed, but never with haste. Luma stood nearby, a hand resting lightly on the elephant's trunk, watching the rise and fall of his breath. Her other hand held the IV line as the vet assistant brought in antibiotics. Every movement was calculated, not rushed, not panicked. They knew what was at stake. If infection reached the bloodstream, the elephant's size would not save him. Septicemia moved faster in the wild. faster than help could return. The wound had to be flushed, cleaned, cut if needed. Every minute mattered. Kalen took the scalpel and made the first shallow cut alongside the wound line, removing the rotting edge. A dark liquid seeped from the fold, foul and warm. They used liter after liter of saline, letting the flush run freely down the curve of the leg, soaking the ground beneath in a stream of mud and blood. The elephant stirred slightly at the cold, a soft sound vibrating through his chest, not fear, just discomfort, half buried in sedation. The snare itself had left behind fragments, thin wires embedded beneath the skin, barely visible to the eye. Kalen used tweezers to extract them one by one, each sliver a hazard, each one a threat to the healing process. The team worked in synchronized rhythm, silence broken only by breath and signal. Gauze came next, packed deep into the open channel before stitches were begun. Not cosmetic, but structural, meant to hold together what had been torn apart. A second line of sutures followed beneath the swelling, anchoring damaged tissue back toward its original tension. They could not undo the trauma, only contain it. As they stitched, Luma leaned closer and spoke once, her voice low and even, barely more than a breath. "Almost there," she said. The elephant's eye blinked slowly. He did not stir. His body remained still, held gently by the drug, not forced. The final step was the antibiotic injection. Kalen pressed it carefully into the vein, watching the slow push of liquid enter the bloodstream. A topical powder followed, coating the wound site in a thin layer of antiseptic. They wrapped the leg loosely in gauze, not to protect from dust, but to signal the site. If he rubbed against trees or stumbled through brush, the bandage would alert him to avoid further injury. Not foolproof, but better than leaving it open to flies and grit. The procedure, from first touch to final knot, had taken under 20 minutes, but each second had counted. If they had waited another day, the infection would have deepened into the joint. If he had run, the tear might have split further, exposing bone, and if the dart had missed, there might not have been another chance. Now, the first damage was held, not healed, but halted. Luma stepped back and looked over the team. The elephant still breathed steadily. His trunk twitched once in reflex. The sun had dropped lower behind them, casting long lines of gold over the clearing. The work was done for now, but what came next would not be theirs to control. Healing could only happen in time. They had given him the chance. The rest was his to carry. As the vet stood and wiped his hands clean, a soft wind stirred the grass, bending it gently around the still body of the fallen giant. The light shifted slowly across the clearing, falling in soft patterns over the folds of the elephant's flank. His massive body remained still, stretched across the earth with a quiet that belonged more to shadow than to sleep. Each breath passed through his chest in slow, measured waves, the kind that rose and fell without urgency, without struggle. The sedative still held, but not completely. Small twitches moved through his trunk now and then, a faint curl of muscle along the edge, barely seen but felt. The healing had begun, but the danger had not passed. Luma sat beside him, legs folded beneath her, one hand resting gently on the base of his ear. It was a place she'd learned to touch with care, where the skin thinned slightly and warmth pulsed just beneath. Not to soothe him, not to comfort, but to anchor. Her fingers stayed light, not pressing, not stroking, only present. The kind of contact an animal could accept without flinching. Her other hand remained still on her lap, radio clipped quietly to her vest. No voices now, no alerts. The team had withdrawn to the edge of the field, watching from a respectful distance, giving space to breath and gravity. The wound had been cleaned, stitched, and dressed, but beneath the gauze, beneath the swelling and the layers of disrupted tissue, healing had only just begun. Sedation was wearing thin. The tremor in his shoulder grew more frequent. His eye, still partially closed, fluttered open now and again before sinking shut once more. The weight was necessary, but it pressed against time like water pressing at the edge of a stone. If he rose too soon, the weight of his body could tear the stitches apart. If he stayed down too long, his lungs might suffer from the pressure of his own mass. Every moment now was a balance, between stillness and strength, between rising and risking collapse. The flies returned, slow and stubborn. Luma waved them away with a gentle motion, not lifting her hand from his skin. She didn't speak much, but sometimes let a soft string of sound escape her lips. Not sentences, just rhythm. A pattern of vowels, shaped in air and left for the wind to carry. She didn't expect him to understand. It was not for meaning. It was to stay with him. A presence shaped by voice, not words. "You're okay," she murmured once when he shifted slightly. "You're okay." Her tone didn't rise. It fell downward like a stone settling into water. The sun sank lower. Shadows lengthened. His breathing grew deeper now, more deliberate but no longer slow. Muscles tensed along his flank. His trunk dragged across the ground with a soft scrape. Luma lifted her hand and stepped back, crouching low, her eyes fixed on the movement. Kalen moved closer, just enough to signal readiness, then stopped. The others didn't approach. The elephant stirred. His forelegs shifted first. A flex of muscle, a subtle lift, then a drop again. He paused, then tried again. Dust rose beneath him. His trunk swung to one side, curling briefly before falling limp. He attempted to lift his head, and this time it rose off the ground and stayed. Luma stood still, breath shallow. The risk had begun. He rolled slightly, gathering strength beneath his chest. The effort showed in every part of him, tightened skin, trembling joints, a faint sound like breath caught in stone. For a moment it looked like he might collapse back down. His rear legs kicked once, then found ground. Slowly, unevenly, the bull pushed up from the earth. His front legs locked first, straining with weight. Then his hind legs joined, shakier, more hesitant. He stood, finally, chest heaving, ears motionless, eyes dull but aware. The gauze on his leg held, though the pressure on the stitches was now real. No fresh bleeding, no sign of tearing. Just unsteadiness, just survival. He didn't move forward. He simply stood there, head low, legs stiff, as if learning his weight all over again. The air had gone quiet. No breeze stirred the grass. Luma lowered herself again, hands loose at her sides. She didn't step closer. She didn't speak. She only watched, letting the silence settle around him. If he walked now, there was still danger. But if he stood, if he just stood, there was a chance. The sky above had turned to amber, the last edge of the sun brushing the tops of the acacia trees. And in that silence, nothing more was needed. The bull remained upright, not strong, not ready, but living. And Luma remained nearby, her presence light as breath until the wind returned. The last of the light bled gently across the horizon, casting the savanna in bronze and quiet. Shadows pooled beneath the trees, softening the lines between earth and sky. The bull remained still, a dark shape against the fading color. His breath rising in thick, steady intervals. Nothing had changed in nearly an hour. No movement, no sound. Only the tremor in his flank and the occasional flick of his tail spoke of time passing. Around him, the land exhaled into evening. Insects moved slowly now, their wings less frantic in the cooler air. The grass bent beneath the hush of wind, and Luma stood quietly to the side, her figure still, hands loose, gaze fixed on the line of his shoulder. Then he stirred. A shift in weight. Subtle but clear. His left leg flexed, pressing cautiously into the earth. The movement carried a ripple up his body, and his trunk, curled until now, stretched forward with effort. A low rumble sounded from deep within his chest, rough and uneven, the kind of sound that hung between discomfort and determination. He tried. His front legs gathered beneath him, and his head dipped as he pushed up. But the weight faltered. His rear legs failed to catch. He dropped again, not with a crash, but with a thud that puffed the dry soil around him. Luma did not move. She waited, watching, letting the moment settle. A pause. Then he tried again. The process repeated. A brace, a lift, a quiver in the hindquarters that gave way too soon. His head lowered, trunk pressed into the earth as if searching for balance in the ground itself. Again, he fell short. The risk loomed close. A third failed attempt could exhaust him beyond recovery. Elephants were not built to linger between standing and falling. Their bodies bore too much weight for hesitation. If he collapsed fully, it might take hours for him to rise again, if at all. The vet whispered from behind Luma. He needs more time. But time was the one thing the body rarely offers on demand. Luma kept her position, eyes steady. She didn't speak. She didn't reach. She simply waited, arms at her sides, listening to the rhythm of breath and earth. Then the shift came. Not sudden, not clean, but different. His shoulders tensed with more control, and his hind legs braced just a moment longer than before. The trunk lifted, curling slightly, anchoring balance. His body quaked from front to back, but the motion held. Slowly, with a shudder through his rib cage, he rose. First the forelegs, then the rear, locking into place with the stiffness of unused joints. His spine sagged at the center, but the line straightened as he adjusted. For a long moment, he did not move. He just stood, upright, breathing, awake. The gauze along his leg clung to the stitched wound, still intact. No new bleeding, no obvious tear. His sides heaved as he pulled air through his long, dry trunk. He stood crooked, leaning slightly to protect the injured leg, but he did not sway. Luma exhaled quietly. The worst had passed. Not over, not healed, but passed. In this moment, standing meant survival. He turned his head slightly, the movement slow, almost uncertain. His eyes met Luma's from across the quiet space, not in recognition, not in thanks, but in awareness. A glance that held just for a beat. Then he shifted again, the weight rolling to his good side. His trunk lowered to the dust. He turned away. She did not follow. She did not speak. She remained still as the giant moved slowly toward the edge of the bush, not rushing, not limping fast, but walking. And walking meant hope. The wind returned, brushing through the tall grass, lifting soft particles of dust around his feet. Behind him, the sun fell deeper into the horizon, and the long shadow of the elephant disappeared into the darkening gold. The morning broke pale and windless over the southern edge of the park, its light stretched thin across the open grasslands. From a rise near the observation outpost, Luma watched the live drone feed flicker quietly on the small field tablet, the image gently trailing a familiar shape far below. The bull moved steadily, each step deliberate, weight still favoring his good side but rhythm returning. He had wandered days on his own since the intervention, disappearing into the wooded corridors between watering paths. Rangers had kept distant watch, never following too close. What mattered most now was space, and whether his instincts would carry him back to the herd or leave him in the long quiet of solitude. The footage showed him just beyond the dry channel, approaching a small cluster of elephants grazing along a tree line. Dust trailed faintly behind his feet, catching sunlight in soft, amber flurries. His body still bore the traces of trauma, slight swelling, patches of discolored hide around the stitched leg, but the gauze had long fallen away. The wound, while not yet sealed, showed no fresh bleeding. What mattered now was movement, and his was sure, though heavy. Luma lowered the tablet slightly and lifted her binoculars. catching sight of them on the open plain in real time. The matriarch stood at the center, broad and steady, her ears moving with the breeze. A younger male, likely no more than 10, shifted his stance and moved toward the approaching bull, brushing gently against his side with a slow, sidelong nudge. There was no sound, no fanfare, just touch. Quiet, instinctive, grounding. The older bull paused, then continued forward, positioning himself at the outer edge of the group. The herd didn't close in around him, but they didn't move away either. They remained near, close enough to feel, distant enough to allow. A small calf passed near his flank and stopped, extending its trunk toward his leg. It sniffed once, then stepped back. The bull did not react. His tail flicked once, then twice, a sign of ease. The matriarch shifted position, her bulk moving subtly toward him, ears extended in full. She didn't reach him, not quite, but she faced him squarely now. Her stillness held weight. Luma knew that in elephant behavior, acceptance did not come through calls or displays. It came through orientation, through proximity, through patience. The herd had seen him return, and they had not turned away. There had always been a risk that he would remain apart. Some elephants, after trauma or injury, choose distance. They disappear into quiet corridors of the bush, living without the rhythms of collective breath and shared memory. But this one had turned back, drawn not just by instinct but by something older, a memory of belonging, and they had let him come. Luma stepped away from the viewing point, letting the moment settle. She didn't need to watch further. What was unfolding no longer belonged to her care. The intervention had been temporary, precise, offered with respect and withdrawn with humility. Healing, she knew, did not complete itself in stitches or antiseptic. It continued in movement, in return, in the simple act of being allowed back in. The air was cool now, the kind that lifts gently off the earth and carries the faint scent of crushed grass and dry bark. Somewhere in the distance, the drone descended slowly toward its base. And beyond it, the herd began to walk again, steady and slow, with one limping step among many. A line moved across the plain, fading into the soft gold haze that always followed morning's first warmth. The sun hovered low over the horizon, casting its early gold across the brittle grasslands. The last patrol of the season stretched ahead of Luma in long, quiet hours. This part of the park had been still lately. No fresh sightings, no movement from the larger herds. It was the kind of day that carried no urgency, only the rhythm of observation, the sound of wind, the silence left behind. Her vehicle rolled slowly to a stop just short of a familiar bend in the land where acacia shadows reached out like slow fingers. She stepped out alone, boots pressing into the fine dust, and began walking without a radio, without a camera, without the expectation of recording anything new. The dry clearing came into view as she rounded the edge of a low thicket. Nothing had changed in the shape of the land. The same cracked trunk leaned to one side, the same ring of worn-down earth lay open beneath it. Grass had begun to grow again near the spot where the bull had fallen. New shoots pushing up around the memory of weight. She stood for a moment, still. The light flickered across the plain, filtered through wind-blown seed heads and the slow movement of air across thorn branches. There were no elephants here now, no tracks that led in fresh from the trees. But the deeper impressions remained, half softened by weather, but present. Round marks in the earth where a body had lingered, had once chosen to rise instead of surrender. She knelt down near one, brushing her fingers gently along the edge, not to examine, not to collect, only to feel the weight that had once pressed there, the kind that stayed even after it moved on. The patrol log remained tucked in her back pocket. She didn't reach for it. No need to note this stop, no data here, no coordinates to mark, just a closing of something quieter. Her eyes moved across the land again, scanning the tree line without intention. Nothing stirred. Then came the breeze. Light, steady, and full of warmth. It carried the scent of dry earth and sunburnt leaves, brushing the hair at her temple and leaning the grass in long waves. It moved through the clearing with a rhythm that matched the memory of breath, of a rising flank, of soft footfalls walking away through dust. Luma leaned forward slightly and whispered. The sound was barely more than a breath. Not a name, not a question. Just a thread of voice, offered not to summon, but to release. "Thank you," she said softly. There was no echo, only the sound of wind carrying the words forward, outward, into a place where presence had once been and now was not. She stayed a moment longer, then stood slowly, brushing her hands clean against her trousers. Her footsteps were quiet as she walked back toward the trail. No one waited. No one needed to know this visit had happened. But the wind kept moving, through the grass, through the open clearing, across the ground where healing had once begun, and behind her, the land remained unchanged except for the memory it carried in silence,